The morning Sebastian Roth saw his ex-wife's carriage rolling up the dirt road to his farm was the same morning he had finally stopped thinking about her every day. He stood in the barn doorway, pitchfork in hand, watching the gilded vehicle bounce over the ruts he had been meaning to smooth out for weeks. The horses pulling it were sleek and expensive, the kind that had never known a hard day's work. Everything about the carriage screamed wealth and city life, two things he had gladly left behind when he signed the divorce papers 8 months ago. Greta, his orc farmhand, emerged from the chicken coop with a basket of eggs balanced on her hip. She was tall and powerfully built, her green skin gleaming with a light sheen of sweat from the morning's work. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical braid, and her small tusks protruded just slightly over her lower lip. When she saw the carriage, her amber eyes narrowed. "Who is that?" she asked, setting the basket down carefully. "My past," Sebastian muttered. "Coming back to haunt me, apparently." The carriage rolled to a stop in front of the farmhouse, and the door swung open before the driver could even climb down to assist. Clarissa stepped out, her silk dress completely inappropriate for the muddy farmyard. She was as beautiful as ever, with golden hair perfectly coiffed and skin that had never seen honest labor. Her blue eyes swept across the property with barely concealed disdain. "Sebastian," she called out, her voice carrying that familiar note of command. "We need to talk." He crossed the yard slowly, aware of Greta following a few steps behind him. He had not invited his ex-wife here, had not given her any reason to think she would be welcome. The farm was his fresh start, his escape from the suffocating expectations of her world. "Clarissa," he said evenly, "what are you doing here?" She wrinkled her nose at the smell of the animals, then fixed him with a look he knew too well. It was the expression she wore when she wanted something and would not take no for an answer. "I came to bring you home. This ridiculous experiment has gone on long enough." Sebastian felt his jaw tighten. "This is my home now. This." Clarissa gestured at the modest farmhouse, the barn, the field stretching behind it. "This is a hovel, Sebastian. You are a Roth. Your family has estates, connections, power. You belong in the city, not mucking about with animals and dirt." "I belong where I choose to be," he said firmly. "And I choose to be here." Clarissa's eyes flickered past him to Greta, and her lip curled. "Is that an orc? Sebastian, tell me you have not been consorting with monsters." Greta's posture stiffened, her hands curling into fists at her sides. Sebastian felt anger flash hot in his chest. He stepped forward, putting himself partially between Clarissa and Greta. "Greta is my employee and my friend," he said, his voice cold. "And you will speak respectfully or leave." Clarissa laughed, a brittle sound. "Listen to yourself, defending an orc like it is a person. You have gone completely mad out here. That is why I brought the papers." She snapped her fingers, and a thin man in clerk's clothing emerged from the carriage, carrying a leather document case. Clarissa took it from him and held it out to Sebastian. "Your father had you declared temporarily unsound of mind. These papers will restore your family's control over your assets and bring you back to the city for proper care. All you need to do is sign them." Sebastian stared at the documents, understanding dawning like cold water. His father, ever the manipulator, had found a way to drag him back. If he signed, he would lose the farm, lose his freedom, lose everything he had built. "I am not signing anything," he said. "You do not have a choice," Clarissa said, her voice softening into something that might have been mistaken for concern. "Your father has already spoken to the magistrate. If you refuse to come voluntarily, they will send officials to collect you. I came here as a courtesy, Sebastian. Because I still care about you." "You never cared about me," Sebastian said quietly. "You cared about my name and my money." Clarissa's expression hardened. And you cared more about your soldier's honor and your pitiful pride than about being a proper husband. You left for that border war for 3 years, Sebastian. 3 years. Did you expect me to wait forever? The old wound ached, but Sebastian kept his face neutral. He had come home from the war to find Clarissa in another man's arms. The divorce had been messy and public, but he had thought it was finally over. I expected you to honor your vows, he said, but that is past. What I do not understand is why you are here now. You made it clear you wanted nothing to do with me. Your father asked me to come, Clarissa admitted. He thought you might listen to me, and honestly, Sebastian, this is pathetic, living in squalor with an orc for company. You can do so much better. Greta stepped forward then, moving to stand beside Sebastian. He is not going anywhere. Clarissa looked at her with open contempt. Excuse me. I do not recall asking for your opinion, creature. This is his land, Greta said, her voice steady despite the insult. His home, you have no right to take that from him. I have every right, Clarissa said. I am his wife. Ex-wife, Sebastian corrected sharply. A technicality that can be corrected, Clarissa said with a dismissive wave. The marriage can be reinstated if we both agree. Your father has already drawn up the papers for that as well. Think about it, Sebastian. We could start over. I have learned my lesson. I would be faithful this time. Sebastian felt the absurdity of the situation threatening to overwhelm him. His ex-wife, who had betrayed him so thoroughly, now stood in his farmyard offering to take him back like it was some great favor. No, he said simply. Clarissa's eyes flashed with anger. You are being a fool. Maybe, Sebastian agreed, but I am being a free fool. Now leave my property. Clarissa looked like she wanted to argue further, but something in Sebastian's expression must have convinced her it would be pointless. She drew herself up, smoothing her skirts with sharp, agitated movements. You have 3 days, she said coldly. After that, the officials will come with the magistrate's order. Enjoy your little farm while you can. She swept back to the carriage, the clerk scurrying after her. Within moments, they were rattling back down the road, leaving a cloud of dust in their wake. Sebastian stood frozen, his mind racing through possibilities and problems. If his father had really convinced a magistrate to declare him unsound, he might not have any legal recourse. The Roth family had money and influence. Sebastian had a modest farm and calloused hands. That will not stand, Greta said quietly beside him. You fought for this kingdom. They cannot just take your land. They can if they have the right paperwork and the right judge, Sebastian said bitterly. He turned to look at her, really look at her. Greta had shown up at his farm 6 months ago, desperate for work and half-starved. Orcs were not welcome in most human settlements, and she had been cast out of her clan for refusing an arranged marriage to a brutal warrior. Sebastian had hired her despite the warnings from his neighbors, and she had proven to be the hardest worker he had ever known. More than that, she had become someone he could talk to during the long, quiet evenings, someone who understood what it meant to walk away from everything familiar. I will not let them take you, Greta said, and there was something fierce in her voice that made Sebastian's chest tighten. It might not be up to either of us, he said softly. They stood in the yard for a long moment, the morning sun climbing higher, the chickens clucking obliviously in their coop. Finally, Greta picked up her basket of eggs. Then we make it up to us, she said. Come on. The animals still need tending, and worrying on an empty stomach never solved anything. Sebastian followed her toward the house, grateful for her practicality even as his mind churned with worry. Over the next 3 days, Sebastian tried everything he could think of. He rode into the nearest town and spoke with the local magistrate, only to learn that the order had indeed come through from the city. He sent letters to old friends from his military days, but the ones who responded were either powerless to help or unwilling to cross the Roth family. He even considered simply running, taking what he could carry and disappearing into the wild frontier, but the thought of abandoning the farm he had built with his own hands made his stomach turn. Greta worked beside him through it all, never complaining, never suggesting he simply give up. At night, they sat by the fire and talked about everything and nothing. She told him stories about her clan's traditions, about the mountains where she had grown up. He told her about the war, about the things he had seen and done that still sometimes woke him in the dark hours before dawn. On the third evening, as the sun was setting in brilliant oranges and reds, they sat on the porch together. Sebastian had a cup of the harsh whiskey he saved for special occasions, though he could not decide if this qualified as special or just terrible. Greta had a cup of the herbal tea she preferred, steam rising gently in the cooling air. "They will come tomorrow," Sebastian said. It was not a question. "Probably," Greta agreed. She was quiet for a moment, then said, "There is one option you have not considered." "What's that?" Greta turned to look at him, her amber eyes reflecting the last light of the sun. "Marry me." Sebastian nearly dropped his cup. "What? If you are married, your father cannot reinstate your marriage to Clarissa," Greta said, speaking quickly as though she had rehearsed this. "And if you have a spouse, it is harder to declare you unsound of mind. They would need my testimony that you are unfit, and I would not give it." "Greta, that is insane," Sebastian said, though his mind was already turning over the idea. "You would tie yourself to me legally just to help me keep my farm." "It is not just about the farm," Greta said, and her voice was softer now. "Sebastian, you took me in when I had nothing. You treated me like a person when everyone else saw a monster. You gave me a home." She paused, and he saw her tusked jaw work as though she was gathering courage. "And I have come to care for you, more than I probably should." Sebastian's heart was pounding. He set his cup down carefully, trying to organize his thoughts. He could not deny that he had developed feelings for Greta over the months they had worked together. He admired her strength, her kindness, her fierce determination. He found himself watching her when she did not notice, appreciating the way she moved, the sound of her laugh. But he had told himself it was impossible, that the divide between human and orc was too great, that society would never accept it. "Greta," he started, but she held up a hand. "I know what people would say," she said. "I know it would make your life harder, but it would also keep you free. And maybe, if you could stand being married to an orc, it would not be the worst thing. I would be a good wife, Sebastian. I would work hard, and I would be faithful, and I would stand by you." Sebastian looked at her, really looked at her. Green skin that had seemed so strange at first and now seemed right. Tusks that gave her smile a unique charm. Eyes that held intelligence and warmth and a hint of vulnerability that she rarely showed. "It is not a question of standing it," he said quietly. "Greta, if I married you, it would not be as some legal maneuver. It would be because I want to, because you have become the most important person in my life, because when I think about my future, you are in it." Greta's eyes widened, and he saw hope flash across her face. "Then say yes." "What about you?" Sebastian asked. "You would be binding yourself to a human. Your clan already rejected you. This would make it permanent. You could never go back." "I do not want to go back," Greta said firmly. "I want to go forward with you." Sebastian reached out and took her hand. Her skin was warm and rough from work, her grip strong. "Then yes, yes, I will marry you." Greta's smile was brilliant, transforming her face. She squeezed his hand tightly, then suddenly seemed shy. "We should do it tonight, before they come tomorrow. Tonight." Sebastian felt the reality of it settling over him, but it did not feel frightening. It felt right. The old priestess in the next valley, Greta said. She performs marriages for those who are not welcome in the town churches. She married an orc to a human once before. If we ride out now, we can be back before dawn. Sebastian stood, pulling Greta to her feet. Then let's not waste time. They saddled 2 horses and rode through the gathering darkness. The journey took 3 hours, following a winding path into the hills. The priestess lived in a small cottage beside a spring that was said to have healing properties. She was ancient, her face a map of wrinkles, but her eyes were sharp and knowing. "Another pair of runaways," she said when she opened the door to their knock. "Come in then. Let's make it official before the world can stop you." The ceremony was simple and brief. They stood before the small altar in her home, speaking vows by candlelight. Sebastian promised to honor Greta, to stand by her, to build a life together. Greta promised the same, her voice steady and sure. The priestess bound their hands with a strip of cloth and spoke words in a language Sebastian did not know but felt in his bones. When it was done, she pronounced them married and gave them a knowing smile. "Kiss your wife, boy," she said. "Seal the bond properly." Sebastian turned to Greta, his heart racing. She looked nervous, her tusks catching the candlelight. He reached up and cupped her face gently, then leaned in and kissed her. Her lips were soft despite the tusks, and she made a small sound of surprise and pleasure. When they parted, they were both breathing hard. "Now go home," the priestess said, handing them a marriage certificate with official seals. "And do not let the bastards grind you down." They rode back through the night, arriving at the farm just as the eastern sky was beginning to lighten. Sebastian felt exhausted but also strangely energized. He was married to Greta, the woman who had become his partner in every way that mattered and who was now legally his wife. They had barely unsaddled the horses when the sound of carriages reached them. Sebastian's stomach sank. They had not even had time to rest. 3 carriages rolled up the road, accompanied by men on horseback. Sebastian recognized the magistrate's official colors on one carriage. The second was his father's, dark and imposing. The third was, predictably, Clarissa's. Sebastian and Greta walked out to meet them, standing side by side in front of the farmhouse. Sebastian was acutely aware of the marriage certificate folded in his jacket pocket. The magistrate emerged first, a portly man with a self-important air. Then came Sebastian's father, tall and severe, his gray beard neatly trimmed and his expensive clothes immaculate. Clarissa came last, looking fresh and beautiful despite the early hour. "Sebastian," his father said, his voice cold with disappointment, "I had hoped you would see reason." "I have seen reason perfectly clearly," Sebastian said. "I am not going anywhere." "That is not your decision to make," the magistrate said, consulting a document. "The order is clear. You are to be remanded to your family's custody for evaluation and care." "On what grounds?" Sebastian demanded. "On the grounds that you have displayed unsound judgment and erratic behavior," his father said. "Abandoning your position in society, purchasing this worthless plot of land, and employing an orc despite community standards. These are not the actions of a rational man." "Those are the actions of a free man," Sebastian said. "And I am perfectly sound of mind, as anyone who speaks to me can clearly see." "Your father disagrees," the magistrate said with a shrug, "and he has sworn testimony from multiple witnesses about your behavior. Unless you can provide compelling evidence otherwise, I must execute this order." Sebastian felt Greta tense beside him. He reached into his jacket and pulled out the marriage certificate, unfolding it carefully. "I have this," he said, holding it out. "I was married last night. Legally and properly. Which means any claim my father has to control my affairs is void, and any plans to reinstate my previous marriage are impossible." The magistrate took the certificate, his eyebrows rising as he read it. He looked from Sebastian to Greta and back again. "You married the orc." "Her name is Greta," Sebastian said firmly. "And yes, I married her." Clarissa made a sound of disgust. "You cannot be serious. Sebastian, this is beneath even your recent standards. An orc. You married a monster." Greta stepped forward, and there was nothing submissive in her posture now. She stood tall and proud, her shoulders back, her chin up. "He is mine now, and I am his. That is the law, whether you like it or not." Clarissa's face flushed with anger. "You have no right to speak, creature. Sebastian, come to your senses. This marriage is obviously invalid. She probably coerced you into it." "The marriage appears to be legitimate," the magistrate said, studying the certificate. "Performed by a recognized priestess, properly witnessed and sealed. It would be difficult to annul without significant evidence of coercion." "Then we will provide evidence," Sebastian's father said coldly. He turned his gaze on Greta, and there was hatred in his eyes. "What did you do to my son, orc? What trickery or manipulation did you employ to convince him to throw away his entire life?" "I gave him a home where he could be himself," Greta said, meeting his gaze without flinching. "I worked beside him without demanding he be anything other than what he is. I cared for him without expecting him to pay for it with his freedom. Can you say the same?" Sebastian's father looked like he had been slapped. He turned to the magistrate. "This is clearly a sham marriage, arranged purely to circumvent the order. That itself is grounds for declaring him unfit. Or it is grounds for declaring the order unnecessary," Sebastian said. "A man capable of planning and executing a legal marriage in the face of familial opposition is not unsound of mind. He is asserting his independence." The magistrate looked uncomfortable, caught between the law and the obvious pressure from the powerful Roth family. "I will need to consult with the regional authorities on this matter. A marriage to a non-human is unusual enough that there may be legal complexities." "There are no legal complexities," Sebastian said firmly. "Orcs are recognized as sentient beings under kingdom law. They can own property, enter contracts, and yes, marry. The law is clear. The law is also clear that a family has the right to protect one of its own from harm," his father said. "And I maintain that you are harming yourself with these choices." "Then let him prove it in court," Greta said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at her. She continued, her voice steady. "If he believes Sebastian is unfit, let him prove it before a judge with both sides presenting evidence, not sneaking around with emergency orders and family pressure." The magistrate looked relieved at this suggestion. "That is actually not unreasonable. Given the new circumstances, I think a formal hearing would be appropriate. I will schedule one for 2 weeks from now. Until then, the current situation will remain unchanged." Sebastian's father looked furious, but he could not argue without looking unreasonable. He gave Sebastian a look that promised the battle was far from over, then climbed back into his carriage. The magistrate followed, clearly eager to escape the tension. Clarissa remained, staring at Sebastian with a mixture of disbelief and disgust. "You have truly lost your mind," she said softly, "to throw away everything for that." "I threw away nothing," Sebastian said. "I gained everything. Now please leave." Clarissa shook her head slowly, then turned and walked back to her carriage with as much dignity as she could muster. Within minutes, all 3 carriages were rolling back down the road. Sebastian and Greta stood in the yard, watching them disappear. When they were finally out of sight, Sebastian let out a long breath he had not realized he was holding. "Well," he said, "that bought us some time." 2 weeks, Greta said. "Can we win in a court hearing?" "I do not know," Sebastian admitted. "My father is very good at getting what he wants. But at least we have a chance." Greta turned to him, and there was concern in her eyes. "Do you regret it, marrying me?" Sebastian reached out and pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her. She fit against him perfectly, her head tucking under his chin. "Not for a single second." "Greta, even if we lose the hearing, even if they take the farm, I do not regret marrying you. You are the best thing that has happened to me in years." He felt her relax against him, her arms coming up to circle his waist. "We will not lose," she said, her voice muffled against his chest. "I will not let them take you from me." Over the next 2 weeks, they prepared for the hearing as best they could. Sebastian wrote to every contact he could think of, calling in favors from his military days. Greta proved surprisingly knowledgeable about legal matters, helping him organize his arguments and evidence. They documented everything about the farm, its productivity, its value, its management. They gathered testimonies from the few neighbors who were willing to speak favorably about Sebastian, though many were reluctant to publicly support his marriage to an orc. At night, they continued to sleep in separate rooms, despite being married. It was not discussed explicitly, but both seemed to feel that their marriage had been made in haste, born of necessity, and that certain aspects of it should wait until the crisis was resolved. Still, Sebastian found himself increasingly aware of Greta's presence, of the way she moved through the house, of the sound of her breathing when they sat by the fire in the evenings. One night, about a week after the confrontation, they were reviewing documents when Greta suddenly set down her papers and looked at him. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Of course. Do you think you could ever actually love me?" Her voice was quiet, almost vulnerable. "Not as a friend or a partner, but as a wife. Or is that too much to ask across the divide of our peoples?" Sebastian set down his own papers, giving her his full attention. "Greta, I already do." She blinked at him, clearly surprised. "You do?" "I did not realize it until you proposed," Sebastian admitted. "But yes, I love the way you laugh at my terrible jokes. I love how you talk to the animals like they understand you. I love your strength and your kindness. I love that you see the world clearly but still choose hope. So yes, I love you. Not despite what you are, but including all of what you are." Greta's eyes were bright, and he thought she might be holding back tears. "I love you too," she said. "I have for months, but I did not think it was possible that you could feel the same. You are educated and cultured, and I am just a cast-off from a clan that did not want me." Sebastian moved to sit beside her, taking her hands in his. "You are brilliant and brave and the person I want to build a life with. Your clan were fools to cast you out, but I am grateful they did, because it brought you to me." She leaned in and kissed him, more confidently this time. The kiss deepened, and Sebastian felt heat building between them. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. "After the hearing," Greta said softly, "after we win and this is settled, then we can really be married." Sebastian nodded, understanding. They both needed the security of knowing their future before they could fully embrace it. The day of the hearing arrived gray and overcast, as though the weather itself was unsettled. They dressed carefully, Sebastian in his old military uniform to remind the court of his service, Greta in a simple but well-made dress that she had sewn herself. They rode into town together, hyper-aware of the stares and whispers that followed them. The hearing was held in the town's small courthouse, a stone building that smelled of old wood and older laws. The room was packed with observers, many of them clearly supporters of the Roth family. Sebastian's father sat at the plaintiff's table with an expensive lawyer, looking confident and severe. Clarissa was there as well, seated in the front row like she had every right to be involved in Sebastian's life. Sebastian and Greta sat at the defendant's table with a local lawyer who had agreed to represent them. though he seemed nervous about going up against the Roth family's legal power. The judge was a middle-aged woman named Harriet Moss, known for being fair but strict about the law. She called the hearing to order and listened as both sides presented their opening arguments. The Roth family's lawyer painted a picture of Sebastian as a man who had suffered from the trauma of war, who had made increasingly erratic decisions, and who had finally entered into a sham marriage with an orc to avoid his family's legitimate concern for his welfare. They called witnesses who testified to Sebastian's sudden departure from society, his rejection of his family, and his unconventional choices. When Clarissa was called to testify, she spoke tearfully about how Sebastian had changed after the war, how he had become distant and strange, how she had tried to help him, but he had pushed everyone away. She made it sound like she had been a devoted wife rather than an unfaithful one, and Sebastian had to grip the table to keep from shouting at the distortion of history. Then it was their turn. Sebastian's lawyer called character witnesses from Sebastian's military unit, men who testified to his bravery, his sound judgment under pressure, and his leadership. They acknowledged that the war had affected him, as it did all soldiers, but insisted he was perfectly sane and capable. When Sebastian himself was called to testify, he spoke clearly and calmly about his decision to leave city life, his purchase of the farm, and his management of it. He produced financial records showing the farm was profitable and well run. He spoke about hiring Greta and how she had proven to be an exemplary worker and companion. And the marriage, the judge asked. Was that truly a love match, or was it, as the plaintiff suggests, a legal maneuver? Sebastian looked directly at the judge. Your Honor, I will not lie and say the timing was not influenced by my father's actions, but the feelings behind it were real. I married Greta because I love her and want to build a life with her. The fact that it also protected my legal rights does not diminish the sincerity of the commitment. Finally, Greta was called to testify. She walked to the stand with her head held high, ignoring the hostile stares from much of the room. She placed her hand on the kingdom's law book and swore to tell the truth. The Roth family's lawyer approached her aggressively, clearly intending to intimidate her. You are an orc, correct? Yes, Greta said calmly. And orcs are known to be violent, savage creatures, are they not? Objection, Sebastian's lawyer said quickly. That is a stereotype, not a fact. Sustained, the judge said. Counselor, stick to questions about the witness's actual behavior. The lawyer scowled but continued. How did you meet Sebastian Roth? I came to his farm seeking employment, Greta said. I had been traveling for months looking for work. Most humans would not hire me because of what I am. Sebastian took a chance on me. Why were you cast out of your clan? I refused a marriage to a warrior who had beaten his previous wives, Greta said evenly. My clan valued strength over kindness. I chose differently. And when did you decide to manipulate Sebastian into marrying you? I did not manipulate him, Greta said, her voice hardening. I suggested marriage as a solution to his legal problems, yes, but I also told him I loved him and wanted to be his wife for real. He was free to refuse. He chose not to. Because you had made yourself indispensable to his farm operations, the lawyer pressed. Because you knew he was isolated and vulnerable. You saw an opportunity to elevate yourself by attaching to a wealthy human family. Greta leaned forward slightly. I saw a good man being persecuted by his family for the crime of wanting to live his own life. I offered him a solution that would also give me the one thing I have wanted since I left my clan, a real home with someone who cares about me. If that is manipulation, then every marriage proposal ever made is manipulation. We are partners. We care for each other. That is all. The lawyer tried several more angles, but Greta remained composed and consistent. When Sebastian's lawyer had his turn to question her, he asked her to describe a typical day on the farm, and her answers painted a picture of hard work, mutual respect, and growing affection. The hearing lasted all day. By the time both sides had rested their cases, the sun was setting outside the courthouse windows. Judge Moss announced that she would take the matter under advisement and issue a ruling the following morning. Sebastian and Greta returned to the farm in the darkness, both exhausted and wrung out from the emotional toll of the day. They did the evening chores in silence, each lost in their own thoughts about what the morning might bring. That night they sat on the porch again, the place where Greta had proposed just weeks earlier. The air was cool, autumn settling into the land. "Whatever happens tomorrow," Sebastian said, "I do not regret any of this." "Even if we lose the farm?" Greta asked. "Even then?" "The farm is just land and buildings. You are irreplaceable." Greta leaned against him, her head on his shoulder. "If we lose, we will go somewhere else. Start over. The frontier is vast. We can find a place where no one knows us or cares about human-orc marriages." "Running would mean giving up everything I have built," Sebastian said. But even as he said it, he realized it did not matter as much as he thought it would. Greta was right. They could start over. As long as they were together, they could build something new. "Then let's not run unless we have to," Greta said. "Tomorrow we will hear the ruling, and if it goes against us, then we will decide what comes next." They sat together until late into the night, drawing comfort from each other's presence, preparing themselves for whatever the morning would bring. The courthouse was even more crowded the next day, word having spread about the unusual case. Sebastian and Greta took their seats, and Sebastian noticed that several of his old military friends had shown up, standing in the back in a show of support. It gave him a small measure of hope. Judge Moss entered and called the court to order. She looked tired, as though she had spent much of the night reviewing the evidence and arguments. She shuffled papers for a moment, then looked up at the assembled crowd. "This has been an unusual and complex case," she began. "It touches on questions of family rights, individual liberty, interspecies relations, and the definition of competence under the law. I have reviewed all the testimony and evidence carefully." Sebastian felt Greta's hand find his under the table, squeezing tightly. "The plaintiff argues that Sebastian Roth has displayed unsound judgment and needs familial intervention for his own good. The evidence presented shows that Mr. Roth made choices that were unconventional but not irrational. He left a society life that was making him unhappy to pursue farming, an honorable profession. He purchased land at fair market value and has managed it profitably. He hired an orc worker, which may be socially unusual but is not illegal or evidence of incompetence. And he entered into a marriage which, while hastily arranged, appears to be based on genuine affection." The judge paused, looking directly at Sebastian's father. The testimony also revealed that much of the plaintiff's concern seems to stem not from genuine worry about Mr. Roth's competence, but from disappointment that he is not living the life his family envisioned for him. That is not grounds for declaring someone unsound of mind. Adults have the right to make choices their families disagree with. Sebastian felt hope rising in his chest. "However," the judge continued, "the question of whether the marriage is legitimate or merely a legal dodge is relevant. I have considered this carefully. While the timing of the marriage was clearly influenced by the legal threat, the testimony from both parties suggested genuine feelings. More importantly, even if the marriage was partially motivated by legal concerns, that does not make it invalid. People marry for many reasons: love, security, companionship, practical concerns. As long as both parties entered freely and with understanding, the marriage is legal. She looked down at her papers, then back up. Therefore, I rule in favor of the defendant. Sebastian Roth is not unsound of mind. His marriage to Greta is valid and will be recognized by this court. The order remanding him to family custody is hereby dissolved. Mr. Roth retains all rights to his property and person. The courtroom erupted in noisy cheers from some, outraged protests from others. Sebastian felt Greta throw her arms around him, and he held her tightly, relief flooding through him in a wave. They had won. He was free. They were free. Judge Moss banged her gavel for order. Furthermore, I am issuing a formal warning to the plaintiff. Any further attempts to have Mr. Roth declared incompetent without substantial new evidence will be viewed as harassment and dealt with accordingly. This matter is closed. Sebastian's father stood stiffly, his face a mask of barely controlled fury. He swept from the courtroom without a word, his lawyer hurrying after him. Clarissa remained seated for a moment, staring at Sebastian with an expression he could not quite read. Then she too rose and left, her shoulders rigid. Outside the courthouse, Sebastian's military friends surrounded them, offering congratulations and support. One of them, a grizzled sergeant named Thomas, clapped Sebastian on the shoulder. "Good for you, Roth. Glad to see you standing up for yourself, and your lady there is a fighter. Anyone who faces down that lawyer deserves respect." Greta smiled, clearly pleased by the acceptance, however limited. They spent a few minutes thanking everyone who had supported them, then climbed onto their horses for the ride home. The farm looked beautiful in the afternoon light, the fields golden, the barn sturdy, the house welcoming. Sebastian dismounted and helped Greta down, and for a moment they just stood there, taking it all in. "It is really ours," Greta said softly. "No one can take it away now." "Ours," Sebastian agreed. He turned to her, suddenly nervous in a way he had not been even in the courtroom. "Greta, we are married, legally and truly. And I meant what I said about loving you. I want this to be a real marriage in every way, if you still want that." Greta looked at him, her amber eyes warm. "I want that more than anything." He kissed her then, there in the farmyard in the full light of day, not caring if any neighbors might see. She kissed him back with equal fervor, her hands coming up to frame his face. When they finally broke apart, both were flushed and breathless. "Come on," Greta said, taking his hand. "We have a marriage to properly consummate." They went into the house together, closing the door on the outside world. What followed was tender and passionate, both of them learning each other with care and desire. Greta was strong and fierce, but also gentle, and Sebastian found beauty in every aspect of her that society had taught him to see as monstrous. They loved each other through the afternoon and into the evening, and when they finally lay tangled together in Sebastian's bed, their bed now, both felt a sense of completeness that neither had experienced before. The weeks that followed established a new rhythm to their life. They worked the farm together, true partners in every sense. Sebastian taught Greta to read and write in the evenings, something her clan had never valued. Greta taught Sebastian some of the fighting techniques of her people, helping him regain some of the warrior's fitness he had lost. They laughed together, worked together, made love together, and slowly built the kind of life neither had thought possible. Neighbors remained wary, and some were openly hostile, but a few began to accept the unusual couple. The local blacksmith started greeting them at market. The general store owner stopped overcharging them. Small acceptances, but meaningful ones. Winter came early that year, blanketing the farm in snow. Sebastian and Greta spent the long evenings by the fire, comfortable in companionable silence or deep conversation. One night, as they lay together in bed with the wind howling outside, Greta spoke into the darkness. "I am with child." Sebastian went very still, then sat up, lighting the bedside candle. "Truly?" Greta nodded, her hand moving to her still flat stomach. "I am certain. I have all the signs. By summer you will be a father." Sebastian felt a rush of emotions: joy, fear, wonder, protectiveness. "A child," he breathed. "Our child." "Half human, half orc," Greta said, and there was worry in her voice. "The world will not know what to make of them." Sebastian pulled her close. "Then we will teach them to make their own way, just as we have. We will love them and raise them to be strong and kind, and anyone who has a problem with what they are will have to go through both of us." Greta relaxed against him. "You are going to be a wonderful father." "And you are going to be an amazing mother," Sebastian said. He placed his hand over hers on her stomach. "Our family, built on love and choice and stubbornness." Greta laughed. "So much stubbornness." Spring came eventually, bringing new life to the farm and preparing the way for the new life growing within Greta. She remained strong throughout the pregnancy, insisting on doing her share of the work even as Sebastian tried to convince her to rest more. Their child was due in midsummer, and as the time approached, Sebastian found himself both excited and terrified. On a warm evening in late summer, Greta went into labor. Sebastian had arranged for a midwife from a neighboring farm to assist, one of the few who had agreed to help despite Greta being an orc. The labor was long and difficult, and Sebastian paced outside the bedroom door, listening to Greta's pained breathing and feeling utterly helpless. Finally, as the sun was rising on a new day, he heard the sound he had been waiting for: a baby's cry. The midwife opened the door, her expression carefully neutral. "You have a daughter," she said. "Both mother and child are healthy." Sebastian rushed into the room. Greta lay in bed, exhausted but smiling, holding a tiny bundle. He approached slowly, almost afraid of what he might see, then looked down at his daughter's face. She was beautiful. Her skin was a lighter shade of green than Greta's, almost olive. She had tiny tusks just beginning to emerge and pointed ears. Her eyes, when they opened, were a striking mix of human blue and orc amber, creating a unique golden-green color. She was perfect. "She is beautiful," Sebastian whispered, reaching out to gently touch his daughter's tiny hand. She gripped his finger with surprising strength. "She is ours," Greta said softly. "What should we name her?" They had discussed names throughout the pregnancy but never quite settled on one. Now, looking at his daughter's face, Sebastian knew. "Sylvia," he said. "After my grandmother, the only member of my family who always told me to follow my heart." Greta smiled. "Sylvia Roth, I like it. Though in orc tradition she should also have a clan name. Since I no longer have my birth clan, what if we made our own? We could be the Greenvale clan, named for this land." "Sylvia Roth of the Greenvale clan," Sebastian said, testing the name. "Yes, that is perfect." The midwife cleared her throat. "The child is unusual," she said carefully. "I have never seen a human orc offspring before. You should watch her carefully for any health concerns." "We will," Sebastian said firmly. "Thank you for your help." After the midwife left, Sebastian climbed into bed beside Greta, and they held their daughter between them. The baby Sylvia made small snuffling sounds, her tiny face peaceful in sleep. "I never thought I could have this," Greta said quietly. "A family, a home, someone who loved me, and now I have all three." "We both found what we needed," Sebastian said. "You needed someone to see past what you are to who you are. I needed someone to help me remember who I wanted to be. And now we have this little one who will grow up knowing she is loved, no matter what the world thinks of her mixed heritage." "She will be strong," Greta said. "She has to be." but she will also be loved. That will make all the difference." They stayed like that, the three of them in bed as the morning sun streamed through the windows. A new family forged from two outcasts who had found each other. The years that followed were not always easy. They faced prejudice from some neighbors, and there were times when Sebastian wondered if they should move somewhere more remote where Sylvia would not have to deal with the stares and whispers. But they also found unexpected allies. Thomas and some of Sebastian's other military friends visited regularly, becoming honorary uncles to Sylvia. A few families in the area who were themselves outsiders in various ways formed friendships with them. Slowly, a small community of acceptance grew around them. Sylvia grew into a lively, curious child. She had her mother's strength and her father's intelligence, and she moved between the human and orc aspects of her heritage with easy grace. Sebastian taught her to read and work with numbers. Greta taught her the stories and traditions of orc culture, refusing to let that part of her daughter's identity be lost. When Sylvia was 3, Greta became pregnant again. This time the pregnancy was easier, and their son was born on a crisp autumn morning. They named him Samuel, and he took after Sebastian more than Sylvia had, with lighter skin and more human features, though he still had pointed ears and small tusks. The farm prospered. Sebastian and Greta proved to be excellent partners, their different strengths complementing each other perfectly. They expanded their holdings, purchased more livestock, and eventually became one of the more successful farms in the region. With success came grudging respect, even from some who had been hostile initially. Sebastian's father never reached out to reconcile, and Sebastian made peace with that. Clarissa remarried, and he heard through mutual acquaintances that she was happy in her new life. He found he felt nothing about that news, neither satisfaction nor regret. That chapter of his life was truly closed. One evening in late summer, when Sylvia was 5 and Samuel was 2, the whole family sat on the porch together. The children were playing in the yard, their laughter bright in the warm air. Greta sat beside Sebastian, her hand in his, both of them watching their children with quiet contentment. "Do you ever regret it?" Greta asked. "Giving up your old life? The wealth and status?" Sebastian turned to look at her, this strong, beautiful woman who had become the center of his world. "Not once. That life was never really mine. This is. You, the children, the farm, this is what I was meant to have." "I never thought an outcast orc could end up so happy," Greta said softly. "You gave me everything I never knew I needed." "We gave each other everything," Sebastian corrected. "You saved me just as much as I saved you." Sylvia ran up to the porch then, her golden-green eyes bright with excitement. "Mama, Papa, Samuel, and I found a baby rabbit in the garden. Can we keep it?" Sebastian and Greta exchanged glances, then Greta said, "Let us go look at it together and see if it needs our help." They rose and walked down into the yard. A family united by love and choice, and the determination to build their own path in a world that had tried to tell them it was impossible. As the sun set in brilliant colors across the sky, painting the farm in gold and orange light, Sebastian felt a deep sense of peace. This was home. This was family. This was exactly where he was meant to be. Years continued to pass, bringing both challenges and joys. When Sylvia was 10, she came home from the small school in town with bruises and a torn dress. She had gotten into a fight with children who called her a monster. Sebastian's initial anger was tempered when Sylvia explained proudly that she had defended herself using the techniques Greta had taught her, and that she had made the bullies apologize. "I told them I am not a monster," Sylvia said, her chin lifted defiantly. "I am me. And if they could not see that, they were the ones who could not see properly." Greta hugged her daughter fiercely. You were right to stand up for yourself. Never let anyone make you feel lesser because of what you are. Sebastian knelt to look his daughter in the eye. But remember, Sylvia, you also represent more than just yourself. You are proof that humans and orcs can coexist, can love each other, can build families together. How you conduct yourself reflects on all of us trying to bridge that divide. Sylvia nodded seriously. I know, Papa. That is why I made them apologize instead of just beating them up. Mama could have beaten them up. She grinned at Greta. But you taught me that showing strength and showing mercy are both important. As the children grew, so did the acceptance in the community. It was gradual, measured in small moments: a friendly wave from a neighbor, an invitation to a harvest festival, children coming to play at the farm despite their parents' initial misgivings. The Greenvale farm became known as a place of honesty and hard work, and the unusual nature of its inhabitants slowly became less remarkable than their character. When Sylvia was 15 and Samuel was 12, Sebastian's father died. Sebastian received a letter from a lawyer informing him of the death, and noting that he had been left nothing in the will, which surprised no one. What did surprise him was a second, smaller letter that had been sealed with instructions to deliver it after the funeral. Sebastian opened it alone in his study, Greta giving him privacy to deal with whatever it contained. The handwriting was shaky but recognizable as his father's. Sebastian, it read, by the time you read this, I will be gone. I am not writing to apologize, because I do not believe I was wrong to want better for you than a farm and an orc wife. But I am writing to acknowledge that you seem to have found happiness in your choices, something I never managed in mine. Your mother would have been proud of the man you became, even if I could not be. She always said you had your own path to walk. Perhaps she was wiser than I gave her credit for. I do not ask forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that I saw in the end that you were never unsound of mind. You were simply brave enough to choose happiness over expectation. That is something I never was. The letter was unsigned. Sebastian sat for a long time holding it, feeling a complicated mix of emotions. There was grief for what might have been, relief that his father had at least understood in the end, and sadness for the years of estrangement that could never be recovered. Greta found him there eventually and read the letter when he offered it to her. She sat beside him, taking his hand. It is not the reconciliation you might have hoped for when you were young, but it is an acknowledgement. That is something. He never could quite bring himself to say he was wrong, Sebastian said with a sad smile. But yes, this is something, a piece of sorts. They sat together in the fading light, and Sebastian realized that his father's opinion, which had once loomed so large in his life, no longer had the power to truly hurt him. He had built something his father could never understand: a life based on love rather than obligation, on choice rather than expectation. More years passed. Sylvia grew into a strong, intelligent young woman who inherited the farm's management, proving to have a gift for both the practical aspects of farming and the diplomacy required to navigate being a half-orc in a predominantly human region. Samuel became interested in medicine, apprenticing with the town doctor, and eventually becoming a healer who specialized in treating both humans and orcs, helping to build bridges between the communities. When Sebastian was in his 50s, gray beginning to streak his hair and his body bearing the marks of decades of farm work, he and Greta sat once again on their porch in the evening. It had become their ritual over the years, this quiet time together at the end of each day. "Do you remember the day we married?" Greta asked. "Racing through the night to reach the priestess, not knowing if it would even matter." "I remember thinking my life was ending," Sebastian said, "that I was about to lose everything I had worked for." And then you stepped forward and offered me a different kind of future. I was terrified you would refuse, Greta admitted. Or worse, that you would accept out of desperation but resent me for it later. Never, Sebastian said, bringing her hand to his lips and kissing it gently. You gave me the greatest gift anyone could give, freedom to be myself and love without reservation. Everything good in my life stems from that night. Greta leaned against him. I think about that day your ex-wife came to the farm, how angry she was, how certain she was that she could take you back. And how I knew, even then, that I would fight for you if I had to. You were mine, even before you knew it yourself. I was, Sebastian agreed. From probably the first month you worked here, if I am honest with myself. I just did not let myself believe it was possible until you made me face it. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over the fields they had worked together for so many years. In the distance, they could hear Sylvia talking to the farm hands, her voice confident and commanding. Samuel was visiting that week, and his laughter carried from inside the house where he was playing with their grandchildren, Sylvia's children. 3 beautiful mixed heritage kids who faced far less prejudice than their mother had, growing up in a world slowly learning to accept differences. We did well, Greta said softly. Look at what we built, not just the farm, but the family, the community, the proof that love can bridge any divide. We did, Sebastian agreed. And it all started with you being brave enough to claim what you wanted, to step forward and say he is mine now when someone tried to take me away. Greta smiled, her tusks catching the last light of the sun. You were worth fighting for. So were you, Sebastian said. So were you. As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, they remained on the porch, 2 people who had found each other against all odds and built a life that defied every expectation. The farm around them was quiet and peaceful, the animals settling for the night, the fields ready for another harvest. Inside, their family gathered, multiple generations brought together by the choice 2 outcasts had made decades ago to believe in love over prejudice, hope over fear. Sebastian looked at Greta, this woman who had changed everything, and felt profound gratitude. His ex-wife had come to the farm uninvited, expecting to reclaim what she thought was hers. But Greta had stepped forward and claimed him instead, not with possession but with love, not with demands but with partnership. And in doing so, she had given him something far more valuable than his old life had ever offered, a future built on authenticity, affection, and absolute acceptance. I love you, he said simply. I love you too, Greta replied. And as the night settled over the Greenvale farm, over the family they had created, and the life they had built together, those simple words contained everything that mattered. 2 people who had been cast aside by their respective worlds had found each other and built something beautiful from the pieces of their broken pasts. They had faced prejudice, legal battles, family rejection, and social ostracism. And they had won, not through force or wealth or power, but through the simple, stubborn insistence that their love was real and worth fighting for. Years later, when Sebastian was old and gray, his body finally failing after a long and productive life, he lay in bed with Greta beside him. Their children and grandchildren surrounded them, a family that spanned 2 races and proved every day that love could overcome any barrier. No regrets, Greta asked softly, her own face lined with age but her amber eyes still bright. Not a single one, Sebastian whispered. You were the best choice I ever made. We were the best choice, Greta corrected gently. You chose me and I chose you, and together we chose this life. That is what made it work. Sebastian smiled, squeezing her hand weakly. Together, he agreed. Always together. He closed his eyes for the last time with that word on his lips and Greta's hand in his. surrounded by the family they had created through courage and love. It was a good death, the end of a life well lived, a story that had begun with an unexpected proposal and ended with a legacy that would continue for generations. Greta lived for several more years after Sebastian passed, tending the farm with Sylvia and watching her grandchildren and great-grandchildren grow. She told them stories about their grandfather, about the man who had been brave enough to love an orc when the world told him it was wrong. She taught them to be proud of their mixed heritage, to stand strong in the face of prejudice, and to believe in love even when it seemed impossible. When her time finally came, Greta was laid to rest beside Sebastian under an oak tree on a hill overlooking the farm. Their graves became a landmark, a reminder of what two people could build when they chose love over fear. The Greenvale farm continued to prosper under their descendants' care, and the name became synonymous with the possibility of harmony between humans and orcs. But the real legacy was not the farm or even the family, impressive as both were. The real legacy was the simple truth that Sebastian and Greta had proven with their lives. That love recognizes no boundaries of race or species, that families can be built from choice as well as blood, and that sometimes the greatest strength comes from being brave enough to claim what your heart wants, even when the world says it is impossible. Their story became legend in the region, told and retold with growing embellishment, but the core truth remained constant. An ex-wife had come to a farm uninvited, expecting to reclaim what she thought she owned. An orc girl had stepped forward and said 5 simple words that changed everything. "He is mine now." And from that moment of brave declaration, a love story had unfolded that proved stronger than prejudice, more enduring than social convention, and more powerful than any force that tried to tear it apart. It was a story of 2 outcasts finding each other, of love bridging an impossible divide, of a family built on choice and courage. It was a story that ended not with tragedy or loss, but with generations of descendants who carried forward the legacy of that love, living proof that the impossible can become possible when someone is brave enough to fight for it. And so the story of Sebastian Roth and Greta of the Greenvale clan passed into legend, a tale told on long winter nights and warm summer evenings, a reminder that love, real love, is always worth fighting for, no matter what form it takes or what barriers it must overcome. Their farm still stands, their descendants still work the land, and their story still inspires those who hear it to believe in the possibility of love that transcends boundaries and builds bridges where others see only walls. The end came not with sorrow but with satisfaction, with the knowledge that 2 lives had been lived fully and well, that love had triumphed over prejudice, and that the family they built continued to prove, every single day, that the choice they made on that desperate night so many years ago was the right one. They had taken broken pieces, a disillusioned veteran, and a cast-out orc and forged something whole and beautiful and lasting. That was their triumph. That was their legacy. That was the true meaning of the words Greta had spoken so fiercely on that morning when Clarissa came to reclaim what she thought was hers. "He is mine now." Not as a possession, but as a partner. Not as a claim of ownership, but as a declaration of devotion. Not as an ending, but as the beginning of everything that mattered. And in the end, when all the years had passed, and all the battles had been fought, and all the love had been lived, that simple declaration of belonging stood as the foundation of everything they built. 2 people choosing each other in defiance of a world that said they should not, and in that choice, finding not just love, but home, family, purpose, and the kind of happiness that comes from living authentically and courageously. The story of Sebastian and Greta was complete, their circle closed, their legacy secure. And if their ghosts sometimes walked the farm on quiet evenings, hand in hand under the stars, well, no one who saw them would have been surprised. Some loves are strong enough to transcend even death, and theirs was certainly one of them. They had claimed each other in life with fierce devotion, and not even death itself could truly part what they had joined together through courage, choice, and the simple stubborn insistence that their love was real and right and worth everything they had sacrificed for it.